Hey guys, welcome back. We're in week 21 and we are talking about signs and what they mean for us as humans and what we can learn about ourselves from those signs. And this week we're moving in the direction, pun absolutely intended, of talking about the wind. That'll be next week. This week we are talking about direction, and more specifically, directions, like never eat soggy waffles, or the compass rose, or northeast, south, and west. Um, and the thing about the compass rose and our direction, the compass individually is symbolic of, not surprisingly, direction and guidance. And then each direction, north, east, south, and west, also has a sort of relevance and its own level of symbolism, if you will. So when we're thinking about the compass as a whole, to start, we're looking, of course, at direction, guidance, discovery, spiritual awakening, course correction, change. If you're thinking about your true north, which is that idea of your moral compass, your moral guide, that can be symbolized by the compass as well. So morality, values, those things that guide us in life, those are also sort of symbolized by the compass rose. If you are a Christian, our compass is supposed to be the Holy Spirit. That's supposed to be like our guiding light, if you will. When we think about the compass, we think about direction and guidance. We might think about the stars, because obviously stars are also used to guide. We might think about other light sources, because they're, a lamp to our feet. They help to guide as well. So if you aren't aware, or if you haven't been paying attention to the whole series and you're just tuning in, welcome. A lot of these sort of archetypal ideas, they repeat. Because the thing about archetypes is that they're universal and they tell us a lot about life. So when we're looking at change and direction and we see it coming up and coming up and coming up and coming up, it's because the only constant is change. And we need something to guide us through those changing moments in our life. Personal story here, transparency always. I like to give you guys my authentic self. I am no good in big change moments. When it comes to big change and upheaval in my life, I historically have had a huge issue in trying to stay grounded through those change times. And I just think about the big transitions of my life, from high school to college, from college to teaching, from teaching to now. And they're always characterized by this huge upheaval, not just in the routine and my expectation of what I'm doing in my daily schedule, but also in me. I found, as I was kind of looking at my life and wondering what the heck's going on, that there was this cycle, this routine, this pattern, that every time a big change came, I acted contrary to my moral values. It was like sort of rebelling against the process, if that makes any sense. So in my most transitional years is normally where like the biggest problems occur. 8th grade to freshman year as well. Big problems. And that was a cycle that I definitely want to break and wanted to break. And I found it's because I wasn't rooted strongly enough in anything to stay steady when the winds of change came knocking, which they always do, right? So the first thing that we really want to think about, and I don't know where I have it, Bill George has this awesome book that I suggest everybody reads. It's called True North. Bill George is talking about authenticity. I was reading it for my dissertation, and it is such a good book because it really talks about, what are you led by? What is your moral true north, right? Like, what keeps you grounded amid the turbulent times, right? When turbulence comes a knocking, what do you do? And I found that I really had to think. I was like, what is my true north? What really grounds me? As a Christian, like I said, of course, it's going to be the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is just kind of like Christ's spirit. So really, it's Christ. I found that what really has always grounded me is books, weirdly enough. The problem is, though, with books, you have to be careful what you're reading. So I had a tendency to read romantic kind of fairy tales where everything worked out perfectly. And I found that that really shaped my self-concept and what I expected to kind of happen in my life. And that was actually really unrealistic, because it's called fiction for a reason. And on one hand, there is a lot of truth in fiction, for sure. But on the other hand, there's a lot of fiction in fiction as well. So I got a new book, right? My new book is my new moral compass, my new guide, and that's obviously the Bible. It's not a new book. I mean, I've been a Christian my whole life, so I've been studying the Bible my whole life. But I'm actually in the book of James right now, and it talks about how there are hearers of the words and there are doers of the word. And I was somebody who listened to the word, but I didn't do it. And there's a real big problem with people who hear something, but they don't do anything. They talk a lot, they listen maybe, but they don't do. All talk, no action. And I was that Christian, where I talked a lot and I was kind to a lot of people and I wanted the best for everybody and I wanted to be a safe space for people. But when times got hard, I didn't execute my faith. I didn't really ground to anything. I expected myself to have all the answers, which, as any Christian will tell you, is not realistic, because you don't have all the answers, but like Christ does. So, right. So I found myself not a new book, but I found myself a different way to execute the book I was reading, I guess we could say. So my true north, of course, is going to be the Bible. It's a tough thing to have Bible as a true north, because there's a lot in the Bible. On one hand, you get like Jesus, master teacher, right? Who's telling you to love your neighbor as you love yourself and love God. And then you also have him like very frustrated, righteous indignation, flipping over tables. And if you aren't well versed in the word, you don't realize that, what he's saying about being kind to your fellow neighbor and loving yourself and loving God, it's all really important, but it doesn't mean that you can't get angry too, because we're human and we're in the flesh and a lot of bad things happen down here, right? So it is kind of difficult too to have something that is relatively interpretive as your moral compass, because, so for me, I narrowed it down to values that I always want to keep in mind. And I found that loyalty wasn't one of my values. It wasn't one of my core values. Like the wind, I was kind of without a root. When you think about the wind, when you think about things changing and direction versus no direction, wasn't very grounded in anything. I was very quick to be like, okay, next thing, on to the next. And my values changed as my life changed, and it took a new direction that I totally didn't expect. My values changed too, to some degree, where I still valued respect and I still valued honesty, but loyalty got added in. And I started to value when I found someone who was really loyal to me, and I had someone who stuck by me for the first time in my life. I was like, oh, that's loyalty. That's really nice. And I found that I hadn't been loyal to Christ. I hadn't been loyal to my boyfriend at the time. I hadn't been loyal to my profession. I hadn't been loyal to anyone. I'd been loyal to myself. And self-care is one thing, but being loyal to just yourself usually ends you in like a kind of a deserted island. You kind of end up being a lonely island. Speaking of, direction, we think of ships a lot. And so I'm just telling you my personal journey with this idea of guidance and guiding points. What do you look to for guidance? What do you look to for guidance when your life is in a crazy state of confusion? When I was younger, it used to be my mom. I used to always look to my mom for guidance. She had all the answers. There was nothing I couldn't tell her. She was my best friend. Didn't matter that she was 25 years older than I was. I trusted her. I knew she had all the answers. And then when I got older and I started realizing family trauma patterns and all these things, I realized that, well, maybe I need a different source of guidance, because it's not really fair to put my mom on that pedestal or make her out to be something more than she is. She's a human. I'm a human. We're all human. We're all doing the best we can. So, of course, I rerouted and course corrected and just started looking to Jesus. Like, that's the answer. That's the source. That's where I'm going. He is my morality. WWJD, let's try it. And usually, I fail pretty often because it's really hard standard to keep yourself to try to be like Jesus. But when we have a high standard, we can work up to it. And even if we never hit it, the closer we get, the better we'll be. So what guides you? What is your direction? What are you focusing on? That was another thing I found. I was focusing on the wrong things. Very distorted thought processes. I was worried about the wrong things. I'm trying to think of a good example of that. I was very focused on being the best version of myself to align with my goals, but I had the wrong goals. And so when you're focusing on being the best version of yourself, but you have the wrong goals that you're aligning to, the problem becomes that you are kind of off the path you need to be on. That's true of someone who wants to be a chief executive operator or something, or officer, chief executive officer, not operator. And they give up all their moral integrity, all their values, all their family relationships, all their friends, and they give up everything to get that CEO position. Well, now you've got the position, but you've got no character. And I was there. I had given up my character and the things that matter to me in order to have this idealized future for myself, this version of what I wanted my reality to be. And I gave up a lot of things in the process. And it blew up in my face, so much blow up in my face. And now I'm like, oh, this all makes sense. I get it now. I understand so many things on a deeper level now that I probably would not have had I not gone through those really tough storms and those really big trials. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I would not wish it on anybody. That is why I'm here. Figure yourself out before life figures it out for you. Because when life figures it out for you, it is painful and not fun. It is rarely fun. So, I'm going to ask you again. What guides you? What is your direction? For me, it used to be my goals, my plans, my ambition, a fantasized version of what I thought my life should be, a fantasized version of what I thought my reality should look like. And the biggest issue, in organizations, like I said, I'm studying organizational leadership. In organizations, an organization will fail when they do not align their current system to their reality. And people are like that too. We fail ourselves when we do not look at the reality of our situation and say, okay, this is it. What can I contribute to it? What is going on? What we do as humans a lot of times is we kind of bury our head in the sand and we look not anywhere around us, but we hide. That is what I did. That's what a lot of humans do. We kind of ostrich. So instead of looking around, taking an honest inventory and being like, okay, here's the situation. What am I doing with it? what we do instead is we're like, here's what I want, and I'm just gonna look only at the stuff that shows what I want, that like reflects back that to me. So what I want to get out of that is, what are you not looking at, but what are you experiencing? Let's say that. What are you experiencing right now? Are you taking on a new endeavor and you're finding that it's not really going the way that you want it to? And instead of taking inventory of what's actually happening, you're kind of like, no, but this is what I want, and I'm going to keep working toward it. Because that was me. Instead of taking inventory of like the real facts, the truth, I was like, true, but this is what I want. So I'm going to keep working on that, even though I have nothing to help me get there. And maybe you're going through that right now, where you have something very specific that you want, and it's unrealistic, and you're not looking at the realistic pieces that you have on the board. It's like playing chess and you want to win, but all you have are like 3 pawns and your king, and your opponent has their queen on the board. You're like, ooh, let me check the reality of the situation here. Let me course correct, right? Your compass does that for you. It helps you do that. So we have to have a really strong compass. We have to know what we're guided by. We have to know what leads us. We have to know what directs us. We have to, and not just like in theory, right? Like if you're, let's say you go to church, but you're like, I don't really want to be here and I don't really care about God. You're not led by God. You're not led by church, right? Or let's say you're a Scientologist and you believe in the universe, but you don't think that the universe has any sway over your life. Well, then you're not led by the universe. You know, what are you led by? Are you led by your parents' ideas? A lot of us are. You know, a lot of us inherit our parents' beliefs and we don't question them. We don't stop to examine them. I think I've talked about this before, but I asked Tom one time, I was like, why are you a Giants fan? He was like, well, my dad was, and like my grandpa was. Okay, so you just are. You just went along with it. We do that with a lot of things, not everything. We do that with a lot of things where we just take on beliefs, even subconsciously, because they were in our environment. So think about it. What leads you? What guides you? What directs you? What propels you in the way you want to go? Is it society? Right? A lot of people are led by society. I have a lot of friends who are like, I got married and had kids because that's what I was expected to do. And I'm like, are you happy about that? And they're like, kind of wish I waited. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. Can't really take it back now. Right? Are you led by what your parents want you to do? Yeah, I'm getting my medical degree, but like, I don't really want to go into medicine. I want to be a teacher. Right? Like, are you led by your own beliefs? And are they correct? Right? I was led by my own goals, but they weren't practical or realistic goals. I was like, what am I doing? I had gotten so fixated on an idea that I stopped looking at the reality of the situation. I was going to get my PhD in literature and literally had no idea what I wanted to do with it. Like, why was I getting it? What was I doing? Right. Who knew? I didn't, apparently. So what are you led by? What are you guided by? What are you directed by? That's your compass. And our compass is going to be so important when storms come. We have to know what we're led by when times of change and transition come. We keep the compass to direct us through change, right? We keep the compass to direct us when the wind is blowing. Think about it like a weather vane. It tells us where the direction of the wind is going. It gives us that heads up about what's coming and how we deal with it. So, last time, a couple times for emphasis here. What guides you? What directs you? What values do you hold on to? What leads you through the tough times? And not what you say, but what actually does it. Because I had to have the hard and fast and very difficult and very introspective conversation with myself, which was, I'm led by my goals and my ambitions, and maybe they're not the right ones. It was a hard conversation. Didn't love it. But necessary, because then you get to realign. And you're like, okay, I don't like that. Here's what I want to do, and here's what I want to stick to. When I found out I really wasn't loyal, I was surprised. I was like, I value loyalty, don't I? No, I didn't. Because I was loyal to myself. That's it. I wasn't loyal to anybody else. Had been hurt a lot in life, didn't really value relationships. I had a lot of learning to do. I still do. And when we have that hard and fast conversation with ourselves, we can learn a lot about ourselves. So the compass, super important symbol. Really excited to be talking about it this week, along with other signs that we'll be kind of talking about. Really think it's a good one to help us delve more into ourselves, learn more about ourselves, get in touch with that authentic person that's in there that might be hiding, and really excited to get to talk to you guys about it. So I hope you enjoyed this talk, and I will see you next week. Bye.